Good morning and welcome to our first of three in a series on the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan. I'm Melissa Willis and I'm the new State Education Fund Manager for the Department of Nevada. Joining me today is Bo Bennett, who's our State Education Fund Specialist, and Megan Peterson, Deputy Superintendent. I am thrilled with our turnout today. We have about 60 plus RSVPs, anywhere from superintendents, principals, accountants. We have some folks from legislature and some staff here from NDE joining us as well. So thank you very much for your interest in the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan and working with me as I continue my learning on the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan and building this community that we have to better education in the state of Nevada. So our purpose for doing this series was that we know that here at NDE, we've had staff turnover. We know that you've experienced that as well. And we just wanted to take this opportunity as we start this new biennium to kind of get back together, build that community, share knowledge through common understanding as we continue to implement this funding plan and move it from being managed more like a project to this is our way of life moving forward. We know that our old plan was in the process for 54 years. We know that it's not perfect. There's things that have benefited all of us through this plan and things that are working okay and we can live with. And there's things that we know that we can improve upon. And we want to recognize that on your behalf here at NDE and know that this is truly a partnership moving forward. So that kind of was the environment to say, hey, we really want to get together and take this opportunity and kind of roll out some of our materials that we have to build awareness with the plan and to build that common understanding. So again, this is that first of three. I hope you find it very beneficial. I hope you invite a lot more colleagues to sessions 2 and 3. And I wanted to kind of jump right into today's session. So as you can see on this slide, we have a few things that we want to go over. Again, this is session 1. We're going to provide just a high-level overview of the plan and how it's being implemented, and then open that up to some discussion. In sessions 2 and 3, we're really getting into a lot more of the particulars, a lot more detail about the plan, but we want to, again, start with that common understanding. So you're welcome to add in the text or in the chat area any questions that you have along the way. And then as we move forward, Bo and Megan can respond to those, and we can also recap them during the discussion portion. And yes, it is being recorded, and yes, we can send that out. I just saw that. So what is new with Nevada's education funding strategy? So we know that this is our pupil-centered funding plan. It's kind of facilitated, if you will, here at NDE through our office, the Office of Pupil-Centered Funding. And we have developed in the last year with our partner WestEd some educational resources that we want to make available to you. We're going to cover them through this 3-part series. And they are also located here on our website. So I'm going to jump over there and kind of show you that. So you get there through the NDE website. And if you scroll up here when you're on the main website to offices, if you can, it didn't track me. Let me back up here. See if I can get my screen to move with me. Do I have to share the website via my link? I did. I'm on it, but they're not on it.
Because it's how you're sharing your screen.
Okay. Give me just a second, folks. I need to change how I'm sharing my screen. So. Sorry about that. I think we're back together now. Again, newbie here. This is my 10th week. So like I said, when we're learning together, we're learning together. But so I want to share our website with you. So let's try this one more time. Still not working.
We're not getting anything. It's not showing anything.
Oh,
Just the camera.
One moment, folks. So can we just do a mic check real quick? Can I get a thumbs up or something? Is anyone able to hear me? Thank you.
okay.
Okay, but were you seeing the presentation? No. Joyful. Give us just 1 second.
I could see your PowerPoint.
You could.
Yes.
Okay. But not when I navigated to the website.
No.
Okay.
Let's try it. Let's share. Go to window.
It could be an option of sharing a window versus sharing a screen.
So click that one. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so now we think we're in business. So here is the website. When you come into NDE's website from our homepage, you are going to come right up here to offices. I don't know if you can track my mouse right there. And then once you get into offices, you'll be able to scroll down through the offices. Office of People-Centered Funding is on the very last section. We're at the bottom of the page. And then it gives a little bit of historical background on our office. And then to the right here, there's a Commission on School Funding, and then our overview, which are materials that we're going to cover today, and revenue and funding categories. As you can see, these kind of follow our 3-part presentation series. So as you can see in parts 2 and 3, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. But I wanted to show you where these were so that you can reference them at any time. You have staffing changes throughout the biennium, between when we might have these kinds of meetings. I would recommend sending them over here to kind of get that overview. Or if you need to reference it, you're not quite sure, have questions along the way, you can check here as well. So we are going to jump right in to this first video. And these videos were prepared based on some of these slides and other information that we have. That it's a 4-minute video, provides a great deal of information and kind of kick us off. And again, common information is kind of our theme here today.
Welcome to this presentation on Nevada's Pupil-Centered Funding Plan. This information was developed in partnership with the Nevada Department of Education, WestEd, and Augenblick, Palig and Associates. Each short video in this series covers a topic related to the PCFP. This series of videos covers topics including an overview, PCFP details and calculations, revenues for education, allowable uses of PCFP funds, and lastly, coordinating PCFP funds with other state and federal sources. Section 1. We'll start with an overview of the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan, or PCFP, including why it was created, general principles, and differences from the previous method of funding education in Nevada. What is the PCFP? The PCFP is Nevada's formula for calculating how much state funding is allocated to local education agencies, or LEAs. It was established by the state legislature in 2019 and enacted in 2021, replacing the state's previous funding formula. PCFP Overview. Under the PCFP, school districts, charter schools, and university schools for profoundly gifted students receive funds based on the needs of the students they serve, local cost factors, and local capacity to raise funds. Using a combination of state and local funds, the PCFP provides a guaranteed basic level of support for each pupil, regardless of where they live. On top of that guaranteed per-pupil funding level, the PCFP provides multipliers to the base for some areas, recognizing reduced economies of scale in sparsely populated areas, as well as higher cost of living and relative wages in some areas. The PCFP additionally provides multipliers for particular students, recognizing that some students may need additional supports. PCFP funds are delivered in a flexible, streamlined way, rather than through various programs or categorical grants, providing local leadership with the autonomy to use funds in the way that best meets student needs, while also meeting statutory requirements. No school district, charter school, or university school for profoundly gifted students will receive less funding per pupil under this new plan than they received in fiscal year 2020. The core implementation concepts of the PCFP are equity, transparency, accountability, and flexibility. Equity means giving all students access to the resources needed to succeed. Transparency means providing a clear understanding to the public of how resources are allocated and why. Accountability means showing how funding is used to improve student outcomes for all. And flexibility means allowing schools to make targeted decisions about the allocation of resources based on changing demographics and needs. What is different under the new PCFP formula? The PCFP's formula, enacted in 2021, differs from the Nevada Plan's formula in the following ways. Before, from 1967 to 2020, revenue was driven by cost increases like inflation and step increases. The amount of state general fund support was a legislative decision. Now, from 2021 onward, the amount of state general fund support is driven by a clear and transparent formula based on the Economic Forum's projections for applicable revenues. Before, funds were allocated based on school district characteristics. Now, funds are allocated based on a combination of student characteristics and cost of living measures. Before, the Nevada Plan was primarily comprised of categorical funds that prescribe spending. Now, the PCFP is primarily comprised of a single, flexible pot of dollars that school districts, charter schools, and university schools for profoundly gifted students can use to meet student needs and statutory requirements. Under the PCFP, for the first time, LEAs have a guaranteed level of per-pupil funding, where previously, expenditure-based budgets were built on school districts' actual expenditures 2 years prior. Now, revenue is based on projected state education fund revenues and the state general fund. Watch our next section in this series to learn more about PCFP details and calculations. Welcome to this presentation on Nevada's pupil-centered funding.
Okay, so that's our video. And as you can see, there are 4 more in the series. They're all just a few minutes. There's one of them, coordinating funds. Again, that's part of our session 3. That is a little bit longer, but provide some really great high-level information that we hope that you find useful moving forward for yourself to reference back to, but also any new staff that you have on board as well. I'm going to go back to our presentation. Am I sharing the right thing?
Sorry. Do this one.
Okay, I think we're back to the slideshow. Get started over. So okay. Okay, so that was our video. I'm going to move ahead now. So overview of the structure. This is going to get into how the structure of the PCFP, but beyond just the model that we're used to working with, how this was passed through legislation and how it's implemented throughout the state level. And this will help us kind of on a higher level. And I'll be talking to you about this. This is a slideshow. Again, this is also on our website. It's not going to change it. It's bizarre.
Stop sharing. Yeah, you're just gonna have to roll with old school. Okay.
Okay, so understanding the people-centered funding plan. This is, we saw in the video that this replaced our Nevada plan, which was a 54-year-old plan. So this is still very new. We are in our third biennium, or just starting. We're wrapping up our second biennium, so in the second year of our second model as this has been implemented, and working through the preliminary stages of our third biennium. So again, the focus on this, as we saw in the video, equity, transparency, accountability, and flexibility. And we know that that's something that we are working on. That was the goal and the intent of the legislation as passed. So in the pupil-centered funding plan, there are one new fund and 2 accounts that were established. This is the State Education Fund, is the fund that we use. Think of it like a checking account for the PCFP. This is where we provide your quarterly payments to sponsors, and I'm sorry, your monthly payments and your quarterly payments to sponsors. So that comes out of the State Education Fund. That is funded by 13 revenue streams that are brought in, as well as contributions from the general fund and the allocation that we receive on an annual fiscal year basis. So this is our checking account. We also have the State Education Stabilization Account, which you can think of like our savings account. So if there are excess money, meaning more revenue was brought in during that fiscal year than was allocated to spend, that would exist in that plan. Revenue or generated from interest can revert to that account as well. And then we use that account throughout the year because revenues are not entering our state education fund on a perfect basis, meaning some revenues throughout the year at the state level are materialized later in that year. And when we need to make monthly payments, sometimes we have to borrow from that education stabilization account to fund those monthly payments. And then through the course of the year, return that money back to the education stabilization account. So again, kind of our checking and our savings account as we move through this fund.
I'm sorry, just one quick clarification. There are actually more than 26 different revenue sources that
26 different revenue sources.
including state and local.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then on this slide, we see that a little bit more detail about how the PCFP is built and what's included. Right here, we'll see that when the plan was put together, there were some accounts that remained separate rather than being brought into the PCFP. Those are federal grants requiring a maintenance of effort, such as our federal special education, pre-K or pre-kindergarten, adult education, and our Teach Nevada scholarship. Those remain outside of the PCFP. But within the PCFP, we have 4 main tiers of funding. We have auxiliary services, which include food services and transportation for districts. We have local special education funding, our statewide base, which is our main or our core funding that is provided to you on a per pupil funding basis. And then we have our weighted funding, which provides additional funding outside or in addition to that per pupil funding, but specifically for students who need more services beyond the per pupil adjusted base. And that would be in the areas of English language learner, at risk, and gifted and talented. Through the legislation that enacted the PCFP, we also have the creation of the Commission on School Funding. And the purpose of the commission is to oversee, if you will, provide recommendations to the governor and the legislative branches on how the PCFP is doing. So initially to work through those implementation issues, but ongoing, they provide an annual report where they're analyzing their key initiatives. And those were to recommend cost adjustments, review per pupil funding, identify methods to fund with the goal of getting to our optimal state of Nevada funding per pupil within 10 years. Review laws and legislation related to education, provide guidance, monitoring, and recommendations, develop and review accountability and achievement metrics. So you might hear us as we move through the year. This is very similar to like an ROI process, but instead like a return on achievement. So if we're putting more and more money into a pupil-centered funding plan, are our students showing the gains that we want them to by these added services and added revenues to use for education? Initially to define or redefine at-risk students, remove special education from weighted funding, provide and promote flexibility in alignment and reporting, and then also identify and implement hold harmless principles. So throughout the plan, there are different ways in which we protected the revenue streams and or amounts that districts and schools had available to them prior to the PCFP. So reaching this optimal funding in Nevada is very important and one of the purposes of moving forward with the PCP, and also one of the key initiatives for the commission. Again, that optimal funding, and this is something that as a department, as a commission, and all of you, we want to continue to do what we can to make sure that this is important moving forward, especially now that we're entering our legislative cycle. So any support that you guys can can provide, we are there with you. And this is one of those things that we want to continue as that community to support education funding. Okay, I'm going to bounce back to the slideshow. I'm doing it old school, one screen at a time, so bear with me, please. Okay, sorry about this, you guys. Okay, because of its importance in understanding the structure, I want to dive into this a little bit more and kind of show you how this works together. So I have what we saw already, these 4 tiers of how the model is works. So we have our auxiliary funding, our special education, our local special education. Remember, federal special education is outside of the model. Adjusted per pupil, and then we have our weighted funding categories, excuse me. So these 4 areas, so the 3 weighted funding categories plus special education work together in one aspect, and I want to provide clarity, and we'll jump into this in a lot more detail next session. But students who receive this special education funding through their designation as receiving an IEP or having an IEP at your school are already receiving that level of funding in addition to our Tier 3 adjusted per pupil base funding. So they're receiving that base plus their local special education allotment. When we come over here to our weighted funding categories, EL, at-risk, and gifted and talented, they will receive one of these additional fundings, but not all of them that they might qualify for. Let me run you through an example. So we have a student who is an EL student and also has an IEP. Our model is set up so that it's going to identify that student as being flagged in one of these other special categories, and then it's going to compare the funding that they would receive under each of these categories and identify only the highest weighted funding as their base plus. So they would have this per pupil base plus, in this case, with this student who has an IEP and is identified as an EL, they would receive their special education allotment in addition to their base funding, because they would receive more money under special education than as an EL. Okay, so one more example, a student who is identified as an EL and a gifted and talented student. The weighting is higher as an EL student than it is for gifted and talented. So they would have their base and or plus the additional allotment for an EL student. And that's what your district or school level would be funded for. Okay, I wanted to call that out just because it's important to understand that distinction. Let me jump back a slide. It's really giving me grief here. Just a moment. Okay. I wanted to jump into now roles and responsibilities within our biennial process. So we have, as we saw in the slideshow and listened to in the video, our PCFP process is through this really three bodies that determine how that works and have put it in place. We have our executive branch as our governor, our legislative branch, and our commission on school funding. And so here's kind of just a summary of the things that we talked about that the commission is tasked with. And they provide that annual report as well as updates along the way to our two branches. And here we are, Department of Education receives input from our governor's office and the Commission on School Funding through our support of the commission to implement our model. Okay, so we do work with the legislative branch throughout session, but really once the legislative branch and the governor approve the biennium allotment, meaning we fund our plan, our model, on 2 fiscal years at a time, the department is tasked with implementing that. Okay, so some of our key to-dos, if you will, through the pupil-centered funding plan are to support the Commission on School Funding, prepare our draft model. So each biennium we go through and we take our PCFP model, we update it with updated enrollment based on your October 1 validation dates and our revenue updates from all those various revenue streams, and put together a plan. And then we hand that off to the executive staff. That gets rolled into the governor's budget, which then goes to the legislature to be modified and changed throughout session before it is passed, and we get something generally late May or into June as our approved model that we'll be working with for the next 2 years. And that approved model then is what NDE implements to provide you your monthly payments and do your quarterly annual true-ups, your sponsor payments if that's something. And then as well throughout the year, we're monitoring that state education fund, i.e. our checking account, and the education stabilization account, as well as communicating and working with all of you. Again, after 2 years, this process repeats itself. So implementation plan, just a couple of things I wanted to touch on in a little bit more detail. So within the PCFP, this affects all of our districts, our charters, including our district sponsored charters, and the university schools for the gifted and talented. It is a biennium allocation. So we get that allocation after session, and we're using that for the next 2 fiscal years. Although throughout those 2 years, we do update it for enrollment on that second year based on the October 1 validation. Monthly payments, even though we're on a fiscal year cycle of July through June, because of that short turnaround time frame, your monthly payments run August through July. Let me say that again. So even though we're on a fiscal year basis, your monthly payments for the plan run August through July. Okay, within that plan is also your quarterly and annual true-up process, and then the disbursements of sponsor fees. Within the implementation of the plan, a few things that we use to update that model is information from the 387 388 report. And then we have the Commission on School Funding's annual report. There are a series of other reports and deliverables that the Commission provides throughout the year that NDE supports them on, but these are the core things that we're tracking and that we want to make you aware of throughout the implementation of the plan. The other thing, of course, is that October 1 validation is used for your enrollment updates, as well as a few other things. And we report on that throughout the year. So that's kind of that high level overview we wanted to provide today. I wanted to remind you Give me just a second. They don't have anything. I have 2 more slides. Stop sharing. Goodness. Okay. We're back. Oh my goodness. So I wanted to remind you, our 2 other sessions are coming up. The goal of our second session is to really dig in to that local revenue that is used in the PCFP, to take a look at net proceeds of minerals, because that is kind of an anomaly with how that works and how that flows from fiscal year. And then an overview of the allocation and distribution process for those payments. In part 3, taking a look at PCFP funds and using them strategically. So braiding fund sources. So that's looking at your local, your state, and your federal revenue sources, as well as grants available to make the most of your education dollars. And then again, to provide some additional resource links that you can use to continue to build on this braiding funding sources thoughts. Okay, so those are coming up for the next 2 Wednesdays at 10. And at this point, we'd like to open it up for additional questions. I know that there have been some floating in Teams, but if you want to use your raise hand feature, or you can just drop your question into Teams, we can open it up at this point. Ramona, why don't you come off mute and go ahead and join us, please? Thank you.
I was very grateful for this series. I just want to say thank you to the Department of Education for providing this level of information, because oftentimes we don't have this opportunity and space to just, there's a lot of questions and misinformation that often float out. So anyways, I wanted to ask, so 2 things. Because of the fact that one of the only one of the weights, like you gave that great example of a student that could be multiple layers or multiple identifiers, is there conversation with the commission or powers that be to revisit the need to look at multiple weights of funding, and what is that conversation if that's even being had? So I'll stop there and pause.
Hi, Ramona.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to confirm, you probably saw me turning to Megan. Like I said, I'm 2.5 months into this, so I didn't want to misspeak. So in the commission has looked at that. At the time that the plan was implemented, it is my understanding that there was, because of where we were with funding, and in order to implement the plan within the allocations that we had those first few years, that one of those weighted funding, the decision to use just one of those weighted funding categories was made. But there are ongoing conversations with regard to that, and we're hoping that as through this legislative process and as a commission starts to meet after that in August, that will continue to be on the forefront. Megan may want to add something to that.
No, that's perfect.
Wow.
That's exactly. where we
Celebrate
are.
those small successes. But thank you, Ramona. Wonderful question. I appreciate that you're getting some out of this. I apologize to everyone for the technology issues. And I'll get my own training on navigating through Teams before our next one, I promise. And you had a second question.
Actually, I'm gonna open it up to someone else because I'll come back around. I feel like I can hold off for a second. Thank you
Okay.
for the response. I appreciate that there's been consideration and continued conversations because of the need and the fact that some of our students require more resources than what they're currently getting. Thank you for that.
And just to add on that, so the thought is that you'd be getting the additional funding for the student with that additional weighted need. But of course, the expectation is that that student receive supports in every area in which they would qualify. So we understand that that creates challenges on your side, and we want to advocate for that moving forward for sure. Any other questions or discussion items? Again, you can drop it in chat. We're monitoring that, or go ahead and raise your hand. So prior to coming here, I was a teacher, so I've got great wait time. I can hang out.
Contact information. Website, right? I have questions afterwards.
Yes, that's a good point. So Bo just reiterated that our contact information is on our website under the Office of Pupil-Centered Funding. And you're welcome to email us along the way. Okay. Well, at this time, if we don't have any other questions, we can wrap things up. I hope that you all join us in 2 weeks for the second of our series. And thank you so much for bearing with me as I struggle through those technology issues, but I hope that the information that you gained was very valuable. Thank you very much. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.